this week's best MMA bets. We're talking UFC Edmonton. I'm going to give you guys my lock of the week, most confident picks, favorite underdogs, my Degen props of the night, and then we'll finish it out with the parlays. So make sure you guys smash that like button. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. Turn the post notifications on and make sure you share the video too. Last week was phenomenal. Absolutely crushed it. My first ever lock of the week parlay hit with Khamzat Chimaev and Lerone Murphy versus Dan Ige over 2.5 rounds. It was sitting at -120. Tremendous lock last week. And I also clean swept the most confident picks, as well as plenty of the parlays hit too. Even some plus 1,000 money with the Degen Savage EVOV parlay. I'm looking to keep this momentum as we head over to the Great White North. And I think I got some banging picks this week as well. So without further ado, the lock of the week.
Here is the Moroccan Devil, Youssef Zalal!
Youssef Zalal to beat Jack Shore. I see this as a certainty. Jack Shore is a former bantamweight who was known as a relatively good submission artist, but has really struggled as he's moved up in the ranks. And then you see Youssef Zalal re-emerging on the scene, finishing Billy Q, who's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, making it look easy against Jerno Aarons. You have to favor the Youssef Zalal momentum, but you also have to look at Youssef Zalal's work inside of the UFC during his first run, which may have been unsuccessful, but there were always moments where you felt he had great promise. Same cannot be said for Jack Shore. Jack Shore was doing okay at bantamweight, lost to Ricky Simone, ended up moving up in weight, recently lost to Joanderson Brito. He's a skinny, fat featherweight in the UFC. I really think he needs to dial in and put on a few pounds of muscle. I really don't believe that he takes strength and conditioning serious. He's one of those guys that relies on talent. Youssef Zalal also has talent, but I know for a fact he's got more dog in him than the side of Jack Shore. Now, it is a chalky-locky this week. I think we're in for a very interesting card over in the Great White North for UFC Edmonton. So I favored the chalky-locky, which lately I've been straying away from, and I've been doing a lot of value picks. We've been doing underdogs or real close money lines, but I didn't want to lie to you guys and try and chase an even money tag that wasn't a very high confident call. I like the mix of money odds and high level of confidence. Even though that's not what we're looking at this week, I still see a sure winner. Youssef Zalal has a kickboxing base, but he also has developed nasty jiu-jitsu, very good wrestling skills, and I 1,000% believe he is the superior strength and conditioned athlete. There's a physicality advantage. He's going to win this fight. It more becomes about how does he win it. If you're looking to find maximum Degen value, you have plus 800 for the submission line for Youssef Zalal. Yes, it's a bit of a Degen chase, but I do think it's very likely, I don't want to say it's an absolute, that he gets the back of Jack Shore at some point, and I think he is very live to find the rear naked choke. Now, if you just go on money line, you're going to have to lay the chalk, and then you're probably going to be mixing and matching it with one of the other confident picks for a parlay piece, and that's why at the end, I got you guys covered with some savage parlays. I'm looking here, though, at some of these lineups, all right? So we got Youssef Zalal -250. But if we look towards decision, is it worthwhile? Plus 100. I would rather go for 8-1. Submission at plus 800 for Youssef Zalal, to me, is nonsensical. Youssef Zalal is too good on the ground to be completely overlooked. And I know Jack Shore's got some submission wins at a lower level, but I think Youssef Zalal at this point in 2024, this Youssef Zalal 2.0 has top 15 potential. I've always thought he had a lot of ability, but he couldn't put it together during his first UFC run. He's on fire right now, and I don't think Jack Shore is going to put that fire out. So Youssef Zalal is going to be my lock this week. We're going chalky, locky, and that's why I'm bringing some savagery with the parlays at the end, because we got to keep that plus money coming. Now, I do want to jump over to my most confident picks on the card. We'll bring the 4 up on screen, and I'll talk about each one of them. Mike Malott, first up, at -255. Again, kind of like a chalky-locky, but I truly believe he beats Trevin Giles. They did a grappling competition. Giles did survive until the end, but he was compromised in certain positions and he did give up his back. Mike Malott is a very good dominating grappler who was on his way to beating Neil Magny until ultimately the last minute of the fight where he completely sold and he ended up getting finished. But Neil Magny is a very well-rounded and crafty vet. I know Trevin Giles is also a veteran, but I wouldn't consider him towards the, top 15 gatekeeper status. Trevin Giles lies somewhere in the top 40 of welterweights in the world. He's a solid journeyman. He does have pretty good looping punches. He's got relatively good explosiveness, and he's not a slouch on the ground. But I'm confident that Mike Malott can strike well with Giles, and then he has an exceptional grappling edge. I believe he's simply superior with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and at worst, he gets to dominant positions and garners control time en route to a win. I don't think Mike Malott is getting checked twice, okay? I don't think he's going to be the Kwame Brown of the UFC. He's not getting released in 2025. I think Malott wins this fight. I think he's a talented guy. He's close to top 15 level, and I think beating a Trevin Giles should be a near certainty. Now, looking at prop betting side, you can see on the screen, submission is plus 250. I do think he's live to finish the job. He was unable to finish Giles in grappling, but this is fighting, and grappling and fighting are different. With punches, kicks, elbows, and knees, things change. Looking at maybe if you're thinking that he doesn't finish, there's decision, which is sitting at plus 400. Very good decision tag there. And Malott could end up winning by decision. But I feel like he is very live for this submission. I'm going to favor the submission call, but that makes me like the money line more so, and it makes me like it in a parlay more than anything else. Mike Malott, a confident pick to beat Trevin Giles. The next one is an over. I'm pretty high on Anheliger and Gibson going over 2.5 rounds. I also have 2 other overs, which I'm pretty confident in, which I'll talk about in the Degen Props section. Over 2.5. It's not great money at minus 245, but I think Anheliger and Gibson is a relatively close fight. I could see it going either way. I did pick Gibson initially, but Chad Anheliger is a tricky guy to deal with. And you know what? Anheliger does have a submission loss against Jose Johnson. It was in the later stages of the fight. Normally, he's relatively durable. I know Cody Gibson had a quick submission win last time out against Brian Kelleher, but Kelleher is completely washed, and I don't think the same about Anheliger. So rather, I see it as kind of a competitive back and forth, and I'm going to lean towards Gibson probably edging him out 29-28 on the scorecards, but not confident enough in a money line at minus 185 for Gibson. Rather go for the over 2.5. But if you're looking for the straight pick here, just so those that don't know, I am going with Gibson to win a competitive one. But that's not what the confident pick is. It's the over. Over 2.5, minus 245. I am pretty confident comes to fruition. I like that call. Let's keep running. Next up, Charles Jourdain. And I think the best way to play him is straight or in a parlay, so you don't really have to prop chase. Sitting around minus 138 for the side of Charles Jourdain. I'm looking at Jourdain inside distance plus 385, but then I sat down and really thought about it. I asked myself, what are the odds Jourdain really gets a finish with a Victor Henry who's never been finished, and Jourdain is making his UFC bantamweight debut? 20% maybe? Like, it's possible, but it's a bit of a reach. And I think as a fan of Charles Jourdain, it's a little bit of a hope. And that is why the true value on it will be the money line. But I would also lightly recommend to you guys waiting until the weigh-ins to see how Charles Jourdain looks at a new weight class. If he shows up, as I'm anticipating he's going to, in the best shape of his life, looking like a very lean and strong bantamweight, then I think he is good to go as far as a potential money line bet or a parlay piece for value. But I lean you towards the cautionary side of waiting until the weigh-ins, because then we get a final answer. I can look at his Instagram all I want and say, man, he looks in shape. But who knows how the weight cut is going to go. And if he looks like a dead man on the scale, that could impact his performance Saturday. So I'm looking forward to waiting for the scales. But still, if Charles Jourdain looks good, his style matches up well with Victor Henry, and he's en route to a win. And I will be hoping for a finish, because if Jourdain gets a finish, that's massive for his stock, and he could end up getting a massive fight in the bantamweight division and emerge as a top 15 guy in 2025. He's still young. Don't forget, Charles Jourdain is like 28 years old. He's just now hitting his stride and hitting his prime. If 135 is his true weight class, he could end up being a lot better than his early UFC run has been. Next up, the final of the most confident, Jourdain Diniz at minus 175. I'm going with Diniz to beat Derek Lewis. Lewis is one of my favorite guys, and if you watch the channel consistently, you know I consistently pick Derek Lewis to double the consistency up. We got to drop it twice. I'm usually on him, but in this matchup here with Diniz, I worry about the technical abilities of Diniz as well as the patience. Derek Lewis seemed a tad bit slower against Nascimento last time out, and I don't think he can just blitz Jourdain Diniz and KO him. This is a Diniz who's fought some of the best kickboxers on the planet. Yeah, maybe he hasn't looked phenomenal in his early UFC run, but he fought off a Carl Williams, who's a tremendous pressure grappler. And he beat Austin Lane. Granted, he struggled in the first round on the ground, but then he brutally knocked him out in the second. I think Jourdain Diniz in this stylistic clash has promise. I do think he's live to get a win. Over 1.5 plus 115. Diniz for a KO is there. It's sitting, though, at minus 120, which isn't that intriguing. What if we see a slow-paced fight? What if Lewis and Diniz are both on the cautious side? What if this fight looks like Rozenstruik versus Tafa? Or rather, Rozenstruik versus Tuivasa, I should say. Plus 700, Diniz by decision. Diniz takes 3 rounds, out kickboxes Lewis in a patient manner, doesn't go crazy looking for a stoppage, but instead lands more significant strikes, outworks him a bit, and wins a decision. Plus 700 is live for it as a Degen call. I think this fight's going over 1.5. I like Diniz to pull through and win as the technically superior striker and picking him against Derek Lewis because I feel as though this is kind of a hard matchup for Derek Lewis. Normally, he's going to have a striking advantage. In this fight, I don't think he does. Maybe pure power, but as far as offensive attack and even defensive capabilities, I think he's inefficient as compared to the former glory kickboxer and Jourdain Diniz on the other side, who's also an up-and-coming prospect and, you know, several years younger than Derek Lewis. So going Diniz as a confident pick as well. Let's talk about some of my favorite dogs. We'll look at them. We'll bring them up on the screen. I'm going to emphasize the first 2 and then lightly touch on the bottom 2. So, Rose Namajunas plus 110. In a competitive fight, I see her as having a clear-cut striking advantage over Blanchfield, as well as a footwork and speed edge, which will make it hard for Blanchfield to nail takedowns. I'm assuming she'll shoot, and I won't be surprised if she lands a couple, but is she going to get her down consistently and hold her down for enormous amounts of time or finish Rose Namajunas on the ground? Personally, I don't think so. I favor Rose Namajunas outpointing her over 5 hard rounds and winning a decision. Now, she's plus 110 on the money line side. I do think she's a live underdog, and I'm surprised to see her as a dog here against Blanchfield, who's coming off of a fight in some senses she was lightly exposed in. Granted, it was against the top contender in Manon Fiorot, but she tried to pressure wrestle. She couldn't. She showed lackluster striking defense and also kind of a lacking amount of head movement. Her stand-up game is not her bread and butter. It's more so of a tool to get fights to the ground, but I still think she needs to get better in striking to be a true top contender. Now, over is minus 270, obviously over 4.5. Namajunas to win on the cards, plus 185. I will pick Rose Namajunas to win it by a decision. I do think this fight goes into the later stages. So, going with Doug Rose as a dog. Next one, Brenson Ribeiro, who I like a lot, but we do have to check the scales. Kyle Machado is a former heavyweight, and he was a slow heavyweight. I actually had a criticism about him that I had written down in my notes about him in the past, was I think he's on the slower side for heavyweight. If you're a slow heavyweight, you are a turtle speed light heavyweight. Now, if you've checked out Kyle Machado's Instagram recently, you'll see a crazy physical transformation. He looks 10 years younger and seems to have lost like 30 pounds of body fat. He looks like pretty cut up. Granted, he's not been fighting at 205. I don't know how he's going to respond to the weight cut. I don't know if the speed disadvantage is going to be more evident now than ever, or if he ends up being way more athletic and better. He was outstruck by Dontel Mays and Mick Parkin, showed an okay chin, I guess, but I think Brenson Ribeiro has a massive explosiveness advantage in this fight. Ribeiro also has relatively good grappling. I know Machado is a black belt in jiu-jitsu, but I do think Ribeiro is a physically more strong fighter, more explosive fighter. I think he's the faster fighter, and I think he's more powerful too. The way Machado wins this fight is overcoming an early Ribeiro storm and then maybe picking him apart later for a finish in maybe round number 3. Brenson Ribeiro is around plus 136 as a dog, and I don't know how Kyle Machado is favored in this fight. Ribeiro coming off of a loss, but Magomed Gadzi Yasulov decision. Fight before that, he was knocked out pretty bad by Mi Yang Zhang, to be fair. But it's not like Ribeiro isn't one of those type of strikers where if he touches you, he can't put you out. Like, yes, Mi Yang Zhang caught him early in the fight and flatlined him. But he got caught. Shit happens. It was a good scrap. That's how it goes down sometimes. I don't think Machado has the same explosiveness or power as the side of Mi Yang Zhang. I don't think Machado has very heavy hands. Fight to go under 2.5 rounds, minus 165. For Ribeiro to win in round number 1, it's plus 500. Or Ribeiro inside of the distance at plus 225. I do think he's live to win by submission or by knockout. I think both are live methods of victory. I highly anticipate if Ribeiro is to win, which I'm going to say that he does, it's a finish. So Ribeiro for the finish, getting it done, is a underdog call for me. Now, I felt like those are my 2 favorite dogs, but I do have 2 more underdogs that I need to at least touch on. Pedro Munoz, plus 100. Ivana Petrović, plus 185. Munoz, I think, wins a competitive fight with the side of Amin Zahabi, but to be fair, he's past his best days in his later 30s now, losing a lot of fights. Zahabi is on a 4-fight win streak, but I still like Munoz's boxing style, and I think he edges out a competitive one. Over 2.5 is minus 400. Munoz to win on the scorecard, sitting at plus 170, and then the money line of Munoz at plus 100. I am picking him as a dog. Next up, ladies fight, Ivana Petrović over Jamie Lynn Horth. I think Petrović is live to win. Both girls are towards the bottom tier in the weight class. I got to go with more upside potential on the side of Petrović at plus 185. Those odds are way too wide for my liking. I think they should be a lot closer, more like minus 140 to plus 120 type odds. And I do think Petrović is live to get it done. As far as methods of victory, I mean, I lean women's fights often to go distance at this weight class, but to be fair, Petrović has long arms. Could she lock up a sub at plus 800 or get a knockout at plus 1800? Probably not. Probably not. Like plus 185, it's an underdog pick. But personally, at least as of right now, maybe my opinion will change following the weigh-ins. I'm not really crazy about betting the side of an Ivana Petrović at plus 185. Simply a pick that I think is live to come through in a competitive fight. Throw the odds out for the fight and just break it down. For me, I see Petrović having a live way to win. Not saying she's a lock of the century, but I do think she gets it done, and she happens to be an underdog at plus 185. So I personally am loving the favorite underdog section, especially the big 2 at the top. Let's jump to the next one. It's Degen Props time. Now, this is actually a familiar tag. I'm bringing it back. Luis Diniz over 1.5. You guys maybe didn't notice my confidence in it, but at plus 115, I think it would be stupid not to consider throwing down either this as a straight money line or as a parlay piece, because I really think this is a likely over. Luis Diniz seems to go into the later stages every time I play it out in my head. Now, also, Sidey versus Garrett Armfield over 2.5 seems like a pretty live outcome too. I feel like it's a close fight. Sidey with the distance striking edge, but Armfield always very game. Minus 170 for that over 2.5. I like the overaction for the heavyweights and for the bantamweights on this card. I feel like as far as like chasing other props, the final one that I will mention, but not necessarily super crazy about, simply because the value isn't great, but not that it isn't likely. At minus 110, Jourdain by decision, or the over 2.5 in that ladies fight at minus 260. So a lot of fights I'm anticipating going over in this Degen prop section. We got one decision pick with Jourdain on the cards, the other 2 being an over 1.5 with Lewis and Diniz, and an over 2.5 with Sidey and Armfield. To close out the Degen prop section, we got to jump to the fan favorite section, to my favorite section. Let's talk about some parlays. But before we do, we got to celebrate because last week was absolute fire. You can see the winning parlays hit the Degen EV/OV Savage call at plus 1,084. Also, the big prop call at plus 500 came to fruition, plus 550. I got to give myself more credit. Clean sweep of all the confident picks at plus 418. And then everything above it you see is more the safer and solid plays coming through as well. So if you blindly tailed last week, you cashed, even though I consistently say, hey, don't blindly tail. Do yourself, your own due diligence, do your research, back things with confidence. But the blind tailers are very successful. So sometimes it's got to be done. Shout out to everybody that won on their bets. It was a tremendous week, and I'm expecting magic as well this week. Let's talk about it. So I have a list of amazing parlays. I'm getting excited. I'm getting excited just looking at it right now. I'm seeing nice W's. I'm already seeing them. So let's jump first, though. Lock City, it's a safe play. I just want to put a cool name on it. I think that Zalal and Malott are both good picks and very live to win. At minus 104, I see it coming to fruition. Now, if you want to play something with a little more steam on it, you also like Zalal and Malott a lot, but you want that over 2.5 in Anheliger and Gibson, you get plus 170, relatively safe, relatively live. I think it can come to fruition. Zalal and Diniz to mix things up if you don't like the side of Malott at plus 122, plus money tag, and a safe call. Now, to bring some good confidence to the table, Diniz, Malott, and the Anheliger Gibson over 2.5 at plus 206 seems pretty good to me. Next up, Zalal, Malott, Anheliger Gibson over 2.5 and Diniz at plus 329. I just labeled it good. It's almost a clean sweep. Below it, we have the confident picks clean sweep. Just add in Jourdain to the one above, plus 646. I like that clean sweep. I like that plus 646. I think there's a great chance of it. At 6-1, that's a really good value for a clean sweep. Guess I don't have too much chalk on the confident calls this week, aside from, I guess, the chalky locky itself. But as far as the most confident pick section, money odds in some of the fights when you mix it together and put it in a parlay. Next one, we got the dog call. Ribeiro, the over 1.5 in the Lewis and Diniz fight with Zalal, the lock to give you more plus money is plus 643. I think that one's going to end up coming through. Now, if you don't want to play the side of Zalal, my lock for whatever reason, and you just play the dog action together, you're not in a bad parlay either. Next up, Lewis Diniz over 1.5, and then the City Armfield over 2.5 to ride with two overs at plus 243. Now, I am going to do this live because, I didn't have enough room to put it in. And the Jazz Davicius over 2.5 is one that I have to at least give a little bit of respect to. So I'm going to bring it up for you guys right here. I'll just read it off. So if you were to play the over in the Jazz Davicius fight, as well as the other two overs that you see on the screen in front of me, the odds that you're going to get are around plus 355, which jumps you over 100 points, sitting at plus 243. Pretty good call. And that's why I always say, don't just screenshot, because I elaborate further for some of them. Don't be a screenshotter. You screenshot it, but also listen. Next up, we start the Degen plays, okay? I will let you guys know, following the weigh-ins, I'll probably add maybe 2 parlays, and I'll have them as like a little somewhere on the side, because I think there's some fights that a lot of the confidence is going to be dictated by how things look on the scale. So make sure you tune into Friday's weigh-in recap show where I'll talk some more and we'll add 2 more parlays. But to start it off with degeneracy, Zalal, Malott, Anheliger Gibson over, the Diniz and Ribeiro calls, plus 920. That looks magical. Degen savagery. Let's keep it running. Zalal, Malott, and Anheliger over 2.5. Diniz, City Armfield over 2.5, and Charles Jourdain. You want that 10-1 money? Right there. That's beautiful. It's 11-1. I'm not giving myself enough respect. 11-1 plus 1,109 for that pretty savage play. Next up, we just calling it savage straight out. Zalal, Malott, and Anheliger's over 2.5 with Jourdain, Diniz, and Thug Rose. If you think she's winning late, plus 1,512. That's a savage call and a half right there. Now, I said I got to bring some more chaos and craziness to the people. The next one is a Degen savage call all the way up at plus 2,777. The lucky number 7's in it. Zalal, Malott, and Anheliger Gibson's over. Diniz, Ribeiro, City Armfield's over. And Charles Jourdain for plus 2,000. 777. Now, if you rinse and repeat it, but you add in Thug Rose, you get a WOW moment. Straight wow shit. Plus 6,114. Those are extreme degenerate calls. Those right there are ones where a few dollars could end up making you a killing straight back. I got to drop the heat with the Degen Savage calls, and I feel like we also got some really good confident calls as well. I always love the blend, right? You see the cutoff. It goes from plus 243, and then you got plus 900 or more, all the way to plus 6,000. I wanted to include some Savage real, like plus Savage calls. You know, plus 1,000 is incredible already, but why not? Let's have a little fun. Let's look to hit a plus 6,000. Let's do it. And I think it's very live to come to fruition. Now, don't just blindly tail, especially if you're really betting heavy cash down. If you're just closing your eyes and throwing a couple bucks at a parlay, different conversation. But if you're actually looking to throw substantial cash down, please do your own research and see where you line up with what I'm seeing. I have to promote that so people are out there throwing down with responsibility. You know what I'm saying? I hope you guys enjoyed this week's Best MMA Bets. I'm having too much fun with the parlay section, and I'm very excited for Saturday, where you guys can join me for the Fight Companion. I'll be live for the whole card. You can watch me react to everything as it's all going down. I hope you guys loved this week's Best MMA Bets. Definitely let me know what you thought of all the picks in the comments down below. W's in the comments if you got nothing to say, but just enjoy the content. Thank you for everybody watching. Smash the like button if you guys are new. Subscribe it up, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace.